So, students, again, in this session, we are going to discuss about the sexual reproduction in human being. Before that, we have discussed about the what is reproduction, why it is necessary for the reproduction. Just answer is to maintain a ecosystem. That's why the reproduction take place, and which kind of the organisms are basically reproduce the things that is the called as a living organisms. All the living organisms reproduce the things, and there are the two kinds of the mode of the reproduction, that is called the sexual and asexual reproduction. And the sexual reproduction, basically there is a parents, there are the two parents body in which and they contact to one another, and the reproduction take place. Whereas in case of the, there are the some kind of the organisms which do not have the two bodies, only the single bodies are perform the reproduction. And this kind of the organisms like hydro amoeba, these kind of the organisms in which the asexual reproduction take place. And how this reproduction, there are the different kind of the reproduction like budding process is in which the reproduction take place. There is a two kind of the process, and the meiosis and the mitosis. And these are the two process by which the reproduction and the process take place. And mitosis, in mitosis, and the single parents has two cells, and that two total, that means by the single parent there is a two total cell form. Whereas in case of meiosis, there are the, with the single parents there is a six, there is a four, the daughter cells are formed. And the process I have already shown in the previous slides, the previous lecture. Now here we are going to talk about this topic is a very essential as well as very necessary for the knowledge purpose as well as for the study purpose. And these two things are very essential. And so we are going to talk about the human reproduction, how the humans are reproduced, the new one, same new one. And the process, what we call this process, we are going to discuss all those things. Before that, we want to talk about, I want to talk about the different kind of the parts which is which basically participate in the this kind of the activities. And these the basic parts are basically the pair of, there is a what we call as a, there is a pair of testes, these testes, and there is a pair of sperms, adduct, that and the penis. And this the testes are located outside of the male bodies. And when we talk about why we are talking about these things, because in the this, since it is a requirement of this chapter to understand all these kind of the things. And what we is um, the things which is very essential to provide you the basic knowledge about the reproduction. It's also harms, well, whether it is these basically these things we will talk in detail. Just I want to say it. And these the testes, these are the located outside of the male body. I will show the where it is located. I will also show in the different the um, different where. And these testes are basically produce the sperms, and the sperms are then known as the male gametes. It is some basic things. The testosterone are the basically the primary male sex hormones which is released from these testosterone and produced by these testes. I already told the testosterone are responsible for development of the sex organs. If there is a lack of the testosterone, if these hormones are not made in your uh, testes, there is some kind of the problems, and because of that problem there may be some kind of the problems in your um, reproductions and the production of sperms, or and as well as the development of secondary sexual characteristics, that is called the male has a two kind of the chromosomes, that is X and Y. These chromosomes are very helpful for understanding the sexual characteristics for the development. And these are the some kind of the structure of sperms. Here you can see the original structures of for sperms, how it looks like. And there is a called, this part is basically a head, and this part is basically the nucleus of sperm, and whereas it is a mitochondria, and these mitochondria is basically the place where these testes are developed. That means by these the things are developed and gets the maturity. Here you can see here these are the place where the nutritions are made, and that is called the factory of energy. All these energies are here, and this part is basically the known as head, which is mentioned already mentioned here. And from this part, from this to this is a tail part, is known as tail part. And these sperms is basically a male gametes, and millions of sperms are produced by testes in a day. The each sperms is a single microscopic cell having head and middle piece and tail as a part. Head contains the nucleus with a single set of chromosomes. These heads are basically a nucleus, which is basically a chromosomes, and the middle space pieces contains a large number of mitochondria that provides energy during the active movement. When the activity take place, at that time these mitochondria part which provides the energy to the sperm, and the sperm is motile gametes which moves through the female reproductive tract and with the help of the tail. And these tail basically are um, um, enters with the reproductive tract. And when we talk about the female reproductive system, in female reproductive system there is also in human, and like a man there is a testis, and in case of female body there is a pair of ovaries, and this pair of ovaries basically fallopian tubes, and that is called the oviduct. That fallopian tube is a oviduct, and it has a single uterus. Ova are produced by these ovaries. That means there is a pair of ovaries, and these ovaries are produced the ova. And these ova and these fallopian tubes are basically, which is known as oviduct, carries this ova from the ovaries to the uterus, and that passes from the uterus. Fallopian tube carry this ova. This ova is carried by the fallopian tube, and this fallopian tubes from the ovaries. Uh, ova comes from ovaries, and ovaries is linked with the uterus. Uterus hold the growing embryo fetus, where the small babies are means, which is called as a fetus, and these fetus are basically grown on the this in this part which holds the pregnancy. This is the female means female reproductive parts. Here one part is one is vagina, and second one is this is called as a cervix, these things. This third is a endometrium, that is endometrium. Here the ovary, that is a pro. These part ovaries, that is this part is also ovary. There are the pair of ovary which we are talking about. These ovary basically release the ova, and ova gets fertilized, that is the uterus, vagina, and the seventh part is the uterus. Here the in the uterus there is a the fetus will developed here. These three things which you have to understand. Now there is some hormones which is released by these fetus, these ovaries, and these hormones are basically sex hormones, female sex hormones, and that is called the estrogens. These estrogens is responsible for the releasing of the this releasing of the ova, and these estrogens develop of the female reproductive organs, secondary sexual characteristics, development of the female gametes, in that is ovum, and maintains the menstrual cycles. If there is a that ova is not released for time being, then that converted into bloods, and that bloods are come out from the female parts, that is called the menstrual cycle. Then when we talk about the ova, how it is this ova is basically looks like in this way, and that is called the egg cell. That is the egg cell. In human beings, a single mature egg, there is a single mature egg, or we call it as ovum, is released in the oviduct. In the oviduct, that is the fallopian tube, and by the respective side of ovaries every month. Respective side means since there is a two kinds of the ovaries, and that ovaries release the ova, and this ova this ova which is released and every month for a time period of that converted into blood, and that blood which come out from every month from the female reproductive parts. Now the ovum is a single cell. When we call as ovum is a single cell and is much larger than the sperms. And comparatively, it is larger in size and from the sperms. It is the non-motile, and it is not motile means it is not moving like the sperms move. But here the ova is not moved. That's why it is called non-motile and is carried to the uterus by the oviduct. Oviduct by the oviduct, the this ova is basically carried to the uterus, and here the fetus are developed, and the process in which the fusion take place, that is from the male gametes and female gametes when meet together at a particular place, and the process is basically known as the fertilization. This process is basically a fertilization. The fertilization is the basically a process of fusion in which the male gametes meets with the female gametes. And here in case this here, when the you this is a uterus part. Here in uterus there is a fertilization. After completion of fertilization, there is a male gametes and female gametes come together here, and where this kind of the development take place, you can see from here to here, where the embryo develop the uh, into the baby. These things are take place. Fertilization is the union of the ovum and the spermatozoon. There is a, as already told, that where the ovum means there is a egg which and sperms are meet. When they unite, when they combine together, they form a zygote. Here, this is the form of a zygote, and these there are the two types of formation. One is known as external formation, and another is an internal formation. When we talk about the external, it is a union of gametes occurs outside of the female body. In case of human being, the reproduction take place on, that means fertilization or fusion take place internally. But in case of, there are the so many animals in which the reproduction take place um, by the same process, but the and that gametes occurs outside of the female body, like a fish. You can, it is a aquatic animals, it may be aquatic animal, amphibians, and some insects, where the fertilization take place out of the female body. And in case of the human beings or some other animals in which the fertilization take place inside the body, and the that is called as the terrestrial animals, and some other fish which is called as a, there is a, you can see here as it is a picture of the fish in which the fertilization take place in the inside of the body. Both the gametes containing the haploids, that is called a single set of chromosomes, fuse and thus maintain the diploids, means male gametes and female gametes are the single haploids, and these haploids are basically, when come together, they converted into diploids, and that is called the double number of chromosomes. That means there is a 26, 23 chromosomes from the male body, whereas 23 chromosomes from the female bodies. And when these male and female chromosomes are basically haploids, and these are the single, when they combine together, they form basically diploids, and that convert the double numbers from the previous. Now the fertilization ovum is now called as a zygote. Now this ovum, when this ovum fertilized ovum is basically called a zygote. And in human, fertilization take place in the fallopian tubes, where the this fertilization take place. The fertilization take place basically a fallopian tube, that is called a oviduct, and then zygote is carried to the uterus. These zygote, where the fertilization take place, carried in to the uterus, and inside the uterus it undergoes a repeated divisions and grown and becomes an embryo. And here we are already this have been talked what kind of the mode of reproduction. It is the sexual and asexual mode of reproductions. Here the mode of reproduction in animals and plants are explained below. Sexual reproduction, a mode of reproduction in which gamete cells form from two organisms, one male and another one female, combine to form a singular zygote. This singular zygote shares half to its genetic information with the father, and other half with the mothers. Through the basics of its remain the same, there are thus many different mode of sexual reproduction in the both plant and animals. The newly formed individual produced by sexual reproduction is different from parents, both genetically and physically. In case of these plants and animals, um, the newly formed individual produced by sexual reproduction is different from parents, means the structure or the genetic information which we get from the new one is totally different from the parents' body. And not only the genetic information, even the physical appearance also different from the this my parents body. Now the here you can see here, there is a male sperm, there is a ovum, there is a egg which is coming from the ovaries, and these two things are combined together, and this way here you can see, and form a zygote. When these zygotes form take place, then after sometimes it converted into embryo, and embryo becomes developed and converted to in the form of baby. Here you can also see here, when we talk about sexual reproduction in plants, plants reproduce sexual, have a sex part, which we know the as a flowers. Flowers, in the case of the plant, the flower is a sex organs we call as a sex organ. The process of reproduction involves the fusion of male gametes. Generally, there is a pollen grains in the flowers, and that pollen basically are the female gametes. And this pollen is basically called as a ovules. Ovules, and this fusion result in the formation of, when these ovules are mixed to by themselves, or by or transferred to the other plants, that for in the same kind of the organisms, then it converted into zygote and endosperm, that is endosperm's nucleus, which grows inside the seeds and fruits respectively. When we talk about the reproduction, sexual reproduction in animals, among the different mode of reproduction in animals, sexual reproduction is the most common way. Most animals reproduce sexually through a variety of different ways. The sexual reproduction in animals involves the union of, that is the haploids, that is haploids of sperm and haploids eggs, or to the form and like a human being. Here same process are take place, which shares its DNA with the different parent cells. Now the certain invert invertebrates, there are the certain invertebrates such as the tapeworms and other parasites, kind of the organisms reproduce through the process of self fertilization. There is only the single parent's body are involved, that in which the single parent's body are involved, that kind of the reproduction or fertilization are known as basically a self fertilization, in which they fertilize their eggs with their own sperms. And the sexual reproduction in animal may happen internal, like human and dog, and there is external fertilization, like reptiles and birds, where the external reproduction and take place. Uh, you can see here, there is a it is the mode of the reproduction which involve only one organisms offspring, that is producer genetically identical to the mother, almost always has the same number of the chromosomes. In case of asexual reproduction, there is a only one organisms are involved, and when this kind of the reproduction take place, um, the almost the genetic information which come from the uh, daughter cell, that is the same genetic information which carries from their mothers, and the number of chromosomes are same. Hence, they are called as a clone. Moreover, they are exact copies of their parent cell. It is exact copy of their parent cell, and because of this, this kind of the things are also considered as a clone. And here you can see, in case of yeast, there is a fungus that is called the yeast, and this yeast get develops buds, that is here you can see, the size of nucleus is here in this picture is small, but here you can observe the size of nucleus is a larger one, and when this larger one gets mature, it is divided into these parts, and these parts are basically a new buds are formed, and these new buds, whenever this gets matured, they break down from the parent cell and become a independent. And this there is a not only the new bird is not only the single bird, it can be maybe a large chain of birds. And this kind of the formation in which the parent cell, this is the parent cell, and parent cell produces the number of the number of buds from the parent cell. Organism chooses to reproduce asexual by different means. Some of the sexual method are also binary fission, like amoeba and bacteria, in which the binary fission take place. Budding, that is also um, case of in case of hydra, there is a budding, and budding is again the binary fission. There is a the reproduction, that is called fragmentations, and that fragmentation is basically a patches we can observe on the place where always all the times are the moistures are moisture or wet are there, or water are there. That kind of the patches is basically a plain area. That is another kind of the formation, that is called the spore formation, that is a sperm, and vegetative propagation, that is onion. Here the binary fission take place. And same things which is given here, you can go through all these kind of the things which I already discussed. Here the fragmentation. Fragmentation is basically a types of asexual reproductions which exhibited by the planaria. It is a kind of the plants which we can see where there is a the lots of water, contaminated lots of waters are there, in which the parent body breaks into the several pieces. The parent's body, like here you can see, this is the parent's body, and these parent bodies are basically breaks into the several pieces. And these when each where each pieces grown in, and these each pieces are grown individually of the body part is intentionally, and these pieces are basically now grow in I means independently, and the foods by which they are um, developing, they are getting the foods from their soils and water also. Here you can also see here there is a long piece of the this we what we call the planaria, and this planaria is basically break down in their different pieces, and these pieces has a, you can see here there is a nucleus, and there is a vacuoles, and with the and there is a cell wall, and by this the fermentations are take place. The multicellular organisms with the single body organisms such as filamentous and algae, Spirogyra breaks up into the two or more small pieces, or fragment up upon the maturation. These kind of the things take place. When we talk about the regeneration, if the part of the body of an organism is detached, that means detached part grown into the completely new one. This detached part grown into completely new one, and that is called the basically the regeneration. Here you can see here when this is a kind of the le, le, leopard, and this when the leopards of this tail has been cut down after sometimes this again regenerated due to the loss of the cell. After 4 weeks, the tail regrowing tail after 4 weeks and regrown tail after 22 weeks. These kind of the things are basically a regeneration. Like here, the hydra. In case of hydra, you can see here there is a development of the birds, and these birds are again mature, develop, and these birds again the bird, and it also detached with the same one. Here the regeneration in starfish, there is these are the starfish in which these two parts are not regenerated, but after some time there is a small grown on their body part, and it again the grown. Here you can also see if these two things are cut down, means sometimes when it because of some reason when these things are means cut down or cut down from the body, what happened here, the and after some period of time it against the regrow. So you can see in the case of the starfish, and here in case of the hydra which I have shown here. And by this the regeneration take place in any kind of the animals, and there is some advantage and disadvantage of the sexual and um, asexual reproduction. The process requires less energy. In advantages, process requires less energy, and disadvantage is offspring is the exact copy of the parent. Any negative mutation will also passes on the new one. Here, the any kind of the negative information which not which is in the daughter means parents body are there, that directly transfer to the new daughter body. That's why this asexual reproduction is have um, a disadvantage. It take place in a various environment asexual, whereas it is there is a limited diversity within life form, means since um, uh, it take place in various environment, that means there is a limited diversity among the in the daughter cell. It allows the survival of a species. It is difficult to control the increasing population because the asexual reproduction take place the number of the daughter cell. That's why and the population also cannot be controlled very easy. A single organisms can develop a colony, and whereas this cannot adopt to change their environment. All the positive traits of the species are transferred to the future generation. Exactly, and there is a huge competition for the food and space among these species, since the larger number of the babies are grown. That means daughter cells are grown in this reproduction, and these the organisms mature rapidly. They are short lifespan. They have basically a short life span. This is the basic the difference between the means the advantage and disadvantage of the reproduction. Now there is some facts about the reproduction, and the same things which is given here. You can just go through all these things we have already discussed, and then from here you can also make a notes. There is a that is the reproductive part of the human beings. These are the some testes. You can see here. This is the penis, and here the sperm adduct are formed. Female reproductive part, which we have already discussed. Male and embryos, life cycle of any kind of the animals, and it is start from the when the is sperms, and eggs are meet together, they form a zygote. Zygote convert becomes an embryo, and embryo becomes the babies, and that may be the sex organ like female and males. In this way, the zygote are formed. And when we talk about the frog formation, there is a frog formation also given here. Adult frog, tadpole. You can see from here. There is a egg converted into embryo, embryo converted into tadpole. These front bags, that is another conversion, and from this the tadpole frogs are formed, and after that the adult frogs are become. In this way, the basically the formation take place. And in case of the hydra, these things I already discussed. And here is the uh, different kind of the example where we are going to talk about the cloning. Cloning is the reproduction of an exact copy of a cell. That means if any other living parts of the complete organisms. This is the cloning in which the cloning take place, and in the cloning process, we take up the one kind of the gametes and put into the female organs, and after some times these the same kind of the temperature, same kind of the environment that gets in the body of the female, and where all the kinds of the environments are present, and this kind of the things is basically called as a cloning. Here you can, I have shown in this picture, there is a uh, the whole the process is given here. But here you have to understand only the what is the cloning, and the examples is also shown. The production of dolly sheep is the first kind of the baby which is known as a clone baby, and by Lanewill Mutt, this his colleagues in Hamburg, there is a Hamburg, in which these dolly ships are formed, and which is Scotland. And cloning is an artificial method in which the invented by a man to produce organisms without the sexual or asexual reproductions, in which there is no asexual reproduction take place here. Only here only the 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 male gametes are put into the body of the female reproductive parts, and all the environments are given to given in they given in that female reproductive part, and after some times the new or new your daughter are formed, and this process is basically the cloning. And here the how the in what is the different reproductive parts of for what we call it is a uh, uh, plant, and these things which we have already discussed in previous class, just I would like to show you that how these reproductions are take place in case of the plant. And in case of here you can see that there are the two kind of the pollination. One is self pollination, when there is a pollen, these pollens are get mixed with this female parts, that is called as a stigma, and which is known as basically a female parts. And when these gets these pollen gets inside this pollen, these female part, then the reproduction take place. And another way in which there is a one kind of the insect which is that pollens are stick in the body of this stick, and when these pollens are which sticks on this the part of this stick, and when these sticks sit in this ear at this part, the pollens are directly get mixed and get inside the female system, and in this way the reproduction take place. Here these are the questions are given here. All these questions you have to go through all these questions. Answer also given here. You note down all the questions and answers. So it is all about the reproduction in animals and the different kind of the NCRT questions. Um, all these things which you have to note down. What is the reproduction? What kind of the reproduction? That means mode of reproduction. What are the function of the sperms, ovary, function of ova, function of the about the how the what is the asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction, different kind of the examples. The reproduction take place in animals, reproduction take place in plants. All these things we have you, and fragmentation. There is a also one called process called the spore formation. The spore formation is basically a kind, the kind of the asexual reproduction, in which the sperm means fungus are generated, like we have seen the bread. On the bread, if we used that, if you kept that bread in a particular place for in a higher temperature, what happened, these breads are spoiled after 1 days, because there is a organisms which germinated by them by themselves with the presence in the presence of air and the moisture, which is in the atmosphere. And by this is that fungus are germinated, and that fungus are the outer body of that fungus is basically a very hard, and when it is kept on a particular place, it reproduce the same kind of the things in the 2 3 hours, mm, to, within the 1 2 3 days. And the main condition which is required to grow this kind of the organism is to, if there is a the and there is a no airs are coming, and if that place has a get moisture enough, and at that place the fungus are formed, and this kind of the formation is basically called as a spore formation, which is given in your book. And go through that book. There is a one pictures also made in that book, that is same like a fragmentation. uh, I know you will have that much of understanding by which you can get all the information. But here, the reproduction take place only through the single parent's body. Now, this is all about the reproduction of in animals. Uh, and I have already told you that there is some uh, advantage and disadvantage. male and female parts are also shown. There are a number of the questions which is mentioned in your NCRT book. All these questions are necessary. You have to complete on in your copy. Now we will make in next class with different new topics, and that topic that topic name which I want to discuss in this session, that is the sound. In this video I have taught completed. There are the 10 chapters. Out of that 10 chapter, 3 chapters I already discussed before lockdown, and after that the 7 chapters means uh, 9 chapter I have taught here, and overall the 12 chapters are completed. And I want to request you very sincerely that do all the work, complete your notes, um, and also make your understanding. Not whenever you are studying, uh, I don't think take it serious, so that whenever you will come here, you will have a some you will get a small time by in which you will prepare all these the syllabus as per your the coming exams. So this much is for today's. We will now meet in next class with a new chapter. Till the time, you enjoy and complete your notes. Thank you for today's session.